So one comment that I kind of get a lot is asking me if I could make more content for beginners. And while I love to do that, there's sort of like one issue that kind of prevents me from doing that, and it's the fact that all beginners are different. And for me, there's also not one clearly defined level of beginner, so it's hard to know exactly where you are in your journey with music. But one thing I can do is share what I see a lot in a lot of my beginner students. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Nick. If you're new here, I'm a Brooklyn-based musician, and today I'm going to be giving you 5 things that I tell all of my beginner students. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the very first thing that I give to all my beginner students is a simple chromatic exercise. Essentially, you're just gonna go 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, and 4th fret. Also, depending on their grasp of the guitar and depending on how easy or difficult that was, sometimes I'll tell them to repeat each note 4 times, so. And then 2nd fret, make sure you're using your middle finger. Then 3rd fret with your ring finger. And then 4th fret with your pinky. Now what this does is that it allows you to utilize the 4-finger per fret method, where basically each finger is going to stick to a specific fret. So if you're playing something like this, notice my hand wasn't really moving around that much, I was just kind of laying my fingers down. Another thing that it does is that it equally works out all of your fingers, which is super important. A lot of beginners have really weak pinkies or really weak ring fingers because they're just honestly not really strong fingers, so this is sort of a way to kind of improve on that. Another cool thing I really like about this exercise is that you can play it like this, or you can play it like this, or this, or you can do all the variations. You could also move it down the strings. This is a really flexible exercise and you can get a lot of mileage out of doing this. So that's usually the first thing I start off with. My second tip would be to play legato. Now, if you're unfamiliar with legato, essentially what that means is to play long and flowy notes versus staccato, which is very short note. Here's an example of staccato. I'm gonna turn off my reverb. Here's staccato again. And so the notes were really disconnected and they weren't really flowing into each other. Now this is a very musical thing and it can work in some situations, but we don't want to only rely on that. A lot of beginners simply play staccato because they don't have the finger calluses and they don't have the finger strength to hold the note for longer, but that's something that needs to be developed. And so what I recommend is trying to play legato, which sounds a little bit like this. So with that, each of the notes were lasting as long as I possibly could last them, and I didn't lift up any finger in my right hand until I was about ready to strike with a pick. So let's zoom in a little bit. So my left hand and right hand both touch the guitar at the same time. It's really important to have that coordination and be able to synchronize your hands like that. It's very different from like a piano where you just put a finger down and you got a note. The third comment I have is something that I hear amongst a lot of younger students, which is, my hands are too small, I can't do it. The example I always give is Linda Mehan O, who's an amazing bass player, and go check out a video of her. Her hands are pretty small, and she's playing the big bass, and she has a huge sound and has this amazing dexterity. If Linda O can do it, I think you could also do it. That's not to say that she's not super talented or she's not amazing, but it is definitely humanly possible to play guitar or bass or whatever instrument you want despite the size of your hands. Unless, of course, if it's an extreme situation. I don't exactly know. But anyway, part of the reason why you might feel that your hands are small is because you're not used to doing this on a daily basis. Now with the guitar, it's not really about the size of the hands. My hands are like, I guess, an average male size, but I can play a lot of really cool stretchy things on guitar. I could do stuff like this, where I'm playing the 3rd fret and the 8th fret at the same time. I can even use my thumb like that. And it's not a matter of, oh, my hands are really huge or anything like genetic like that. It's more, oh, I've spent a while trying to stretch on the guitar. So if you look at my hand position right now, that's not something you would do on a daily basis. You have to kind of get used to it. This can be achieved through those chromatic exercises where you're doing the 1 finger per fret thing and trying to keep your fingers right over the frets like this. But it takes time and it takes a lot of stretching. Then my 4th tip is to play everything really slowly. Now with a lot of beginners, what I see is like they'll try to play something really fast and mess up, and then they'll get frustrated, or they'll start something slowly and then just slowly start to rush, and then they can't play it anymore, and then they get frustrated because they can't play it. On the guitar and any instrument you play, it's really crucial to play things really slowly and really, really deliberately. One thing that really might help you out is a metronome. If you're unfamiliar with a metronome, it's essentially this little device that basically clicks and kind of keeps a steady pulse, and that way you sort of develop your internal pulse. An example of that would sound like this. This is at 75 BPM. So for example, if you're playing some sort of difficult passage, and I'm gonna put the metronome at 166. Let's say you find that difficult, or that's too fast for you, or like you weren't able to nail the notes right away. So this is 166, I'm gonna drop it all the way down to 90. That's a lot slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. If you need to go even slower, you can do that as well. Drop it to 70. 3, 4. I rushed the second note. Let me try it again. 4, 1. There we go. So then you go up in increments of like 3 or 4. This is 74. 1. Now 78. 2, 3, 4. One more time. That's a little sloppy. 4. And so on. Just go up in increments of somewhere between like 2 and 5 and kind of just gradually go up. You'll find that when you go up, like, for example, 3 beats, it's not that big of a deal, but if you go up 10 beats, it's a big deal. So essentially what you're doing is you're working your way up there and you're getting the muscle memory. You're also training yourself not to push and not to rush, which contributes to a really good time feel. But it's a lot easier to play something fast once you float it down than to do the opposite. So really work on playing things slowly. And finally, that connects to my last tip, which is break things down into different parts. For example, if you're trying to play this line and you're not used to starting things on beat 2 because you're always used to starting things on the downbeat, what I would recommend is taking the first 2 notes of the song or the first 2 beats, where you're going to essentially go 1, 2, and 4, 1, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. Then add in the next bar, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, ready, and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. So essentially just going by little chunks and adding them in. If, for example, you're playing with a 4-chord progression and you're struggling on one of the changes, one thing you can do is isolate the part that's giving you the most trouble. So for example, if you're playing, for example, I don't know, G, A minor, E, D. And let's say you're struggling on the, like for example, E minor to D. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So just isolate that. And again, play it slowly. This connects to the previous thing. I was playing it as whole notes instead of playing with a bunch of eighth notes. So essentially you're just taking apart a piece of a larger thing and isolating it and really getting used to that motion. You're saying, I'm going to get my fingers really hip to playing E minor to D. And once you do that, you'll be able to play the progression without messing anything up. So these are 5 tips I give to beginners, but if you're interested, I also have another video on 5 mistakes I made when I first started playing guitar, learning through YouTube. So if you're a beginner and you're sort of in that same position, maybe check that video out and get some insight. But that's about all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Thanks for making it to the end of the video, and I'll see you next week. Take care.